Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has now been out for 1 week, and there are already a bunch of Pokemon on the radar to be banned. Palafin is on the list because of its strong Jet Punch priority and insane stats when combined with Bulk Up. Iron Bundle is on the list because of its high speed tier, high special attack, and basically unresisted Freeze Dry and Hydro Pump. Annihilate, the new evolution of Primeape, is on the list because of its new move Rage Fist, which can get up to 350 base power. Even Goldengo was added to this list because it might be broken because of its insane good as gold ability. Let's take a look at these Pokemon and more that might be banned in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. It's crazy to think that a Pokemon inspired by Delibird would be up for a ban discussion, but here we are. Iron Bundle, the Ice Water type, the future Delibird, is looking to be banned from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. With Hydro Pump and Freeze Dry, it virtually has unresisted coverage in the game. Taunt, stopping the opponent from recovering, which is very, very important versus Pokemon like Corviknight and just fat Pokemon in general, like Clodsire, from clicking Toxic versus you. Flip Turn to get on out of there. Obviously, your last move can be really anything here. I've seen people run Ice Beam. I've seen people run Terra Blast. This is a very standard set. Choice Specs is another thing that people will ran. Choice Scarf. Booster Energy as well. I've seen Sub Life Orb too, which is really, really, really strong. But let's see what they really have to say about that. My personal experience from this Pokemon is that while it's very strong and very hard to switch into, Hydro Pump is its stab water move, and I never hit that move. I swear I never hit that move. There's so many game defining turns where this Pokemon just straight up misses. And obviously, having pretty poor defenses and HP, it's pretty easy to revenge kill with things like priority moves and Scarf special attackers. Let's see what they really have to say here. If you had Pokemon largely inspired by, if you had said Pokemon largely inspired by Delaware ends up in a ban discussion within the first week of most powerful crap generation ever on your bingo card, you'd be lying because it's too awkwardly long to fit into a... Okay. Nobody saw this coming, and the fact that this is reality we're living in is laughable. But here we are. Iron Bundle has an absolute ridiculous offensive profile, outrunning the vast majority of Pokemon seen with 136 speed, and outmuscling the majority of Pokemon with 124 special attack. This is all great, but standalone does not necessarily mean it's going to be broken. Then you get what really pushes Iron Bundle from threatening to... something to crazy territory. Stab Hydro Pump plus Freeze Dry is virtually perfect coverage, making it approach unwallability. While special defensive behemoths like Blissey can withstand a special assault from Iron Bundle, not many other Pokemon can switch in once, let alone multiple times. Other options like Taunt to stop defensive counterplay and Encore to take advantage of well-predicted entry help clear the path for Iron Bundle to claim many kills upon entry too. Ice Beam can also serve as a great stab ice move that goes beyond the lower base power Freeze Dry, making it not reliant on coverage moves. This all makes Iron Bundle a complete powerhouse on the specially offensive side, leaving the metagame with hardly any defensive checks or counters. And this is the part where I feel like I relate to the most. Of course, it's true that Iron Bundle relies on Hydro Pump to make progress into a portion of the metagame, meaning 20% of the time you use it, you will completely come up empty-handed. And 100% of the time I use it, I will type LOL in the battle chat immediately after clicking Hydro Pump. It is also susceptible to revenge killing from priority and choice scarf users. If it's not using booster energy or the few Pokemon quicker than it, overall there are at least a few forms of offensive counterplay that exist, but they oftentimes require foddering around it due to coverage, which can lead up to an uphill game state regardless of being able to force out Iron Bundle. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest, this move in particular and its weakness to Stealth Rock, of course, unless it's running heavy duty boots, and the fact that it can't straight up like beat everything, right? Like if it's running Choice Specs, or it can also run Terra Blast Water, which I think is a decent option. I've seen Terra Blast Fire as well. I am on the fence about this Pokemon specifically because, again, when I use it, it's very unreliable. And I don't know what your idea is behind it as well. But does that make this Pokemon not ban-worthy because it's still super hard to wall, but you're not always going to hit your attack? Obviously, the Ice Stab is really good, and the fact that you do have Taunt to stop your opponent from going for soft boiled. Also, the fact that recovery moves are missed, are nerfed in this generation really does work in Iron Bundle's favor. I do want to know your thoughts down below, by the way, so make sure you let me know. And also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. I'm on my way to 400k. I upload competitive Pokemon every single day. If you like these type of discussion videos, or if you like moveset guides, Pokemon Showdown Lives, and Wi-Fi battles, which are coming soon, make sure you sub to me. But yeah, this one I'm more on the fence about, just mainly because its best move is inaccurate, and it's not like I mean, I played in a generation where Ashgar Ninja was considered okay, right? And that mon had Stab Dark Pulse, which can flinch you. You could set up spikes and do things, but it did not initially have this crazy speed of Iron Bundle. But I also, it's, in my opinion, on this list, it's more like, yeah, it's very, very good, but there's stuff that are stronger. And there's stuff that are at least more metagame defining at the moment, in my opinion. And let's actually look at one of them, which is Palafin. So Palafin was actually slated to potentially be banned not too long ago, back when Houndstone and Flutter, I say back when it's only been a week, right, since the game is out. And for those that don't know, Fluttermane and Houndstone got banned. I have like a few videos on that. If you guys want to check them out, I'll link them down below. But Palafin was something that was slated to be banned as well. And the main reason for Palafin being banned is, think about it like it's like slacking kind of unrestricted, right? Or like a Regigigas unrestricted. By that I mean the 160 attack does not have something that really holds it back. Yes, when you first use this Pokemon, it is the other Dolphin form. You have to just switch out and then come back in. But that doesn't really stop Palafin at all. You just send it out and switch out. It's not hard. There's so many good Pokemon that you can switch into moves in this game, right? You got Corviknight right there. You got Clodsire right there. There's so many different things. Plus, Palafin also has Flip Turn too. So, and it has base 100 speed. So if it really wants to, it can do its thing. Now, the big thing that makes Palafin really, really nasty is Jet Punch. Jet Punch is a 60 base power physical priority move, right? It's a very strong priority move. For the most part, priority moves are 40 base power. And then you have like Extreme Speed, Sucker Punch, and First Impression, which are the odd men out, right? Like they're the odd moves out, because Sucker Punch obviously requires your opponent to attack you. First Impression, you can only use it the first time you enter the battle, and then you switch out, and then you can use it again when you enter the battle, but only when you enter the battle, right? And then Extreme Speed is very limited on Pokemon. But Jet Punch is crazy because it's basically no drawback, and on top of that, it can Terra Water, which is something Palafin almost always does to make its Jet Punch even stronger. So one standard set you would have is the Choice Band set with Jet Punch, Wave Crash, which is basically double-edged for water moves, insanely strong. Close Combat, which is beautiful to help with the nice, like, it's just really, water fighting is incredible coverage. I'm looking at Keldeo, right? And then either Flip Turn. A lot of people, though, forgo Flip Turn and end up running Zen Headbutt in order to hit land on Pokemon like Amoonguss or Toxapex, which can otherwise wall this set. However, if this set is Choice Band and Adamant Nature under Rain, those two are no longer straight up counters because they have to deal with Choice Band boosted, Rain boosted Wave Crash, which will 2 KO with hazards up. So this Pokemon is once again slated to be banned. Now, these aren't guaranteed, but I do think that in terms of metagame defining, Palafin kind of just hits the main check, right? It's the reason why some Pokemon on this list run specific, and we'll get into it with Annihilate, but some Pokemon on this list run specific Terra types in order to deal with it. It also makes Iron Bundle even better because because it does have that 114 defense stat, and while it does have only 56 HP and 60 special defense, it's Ice Water, so it resists Jet Punch and it can knock it out with Freeze Drive from there. And this isn't even the strongest set. Oh, it is the strongest set, excuse me, but the other set that people are running is Jet Punch, Drain Punch, Taunt, and Bulk Up. Now, this particular set, the reason this thing thrives is because it can get away with running like a bulkier variation, basically, so you can actually tank hits. It still runs Terra type water, that way your Jet Punch is still incredibly strong, and +1 is the same damage. Jet Punch is the same as basically being Choice Band, and it has Taunt, and the reason this set is even better now is because Scald no longer exists, right? So this cannot be walled by bulky waters. It's the reason why Toxapex is running Sludge Bomb or Poison Jab to poison it and be able to deal with it. It's the reason why Clodsire is sometimes running Sludge Bomb because they get taunted and they can still be weak 1v1. This set actually even beats Unaware Dondozo. And because Dondozo has such a high HP stat that even though you're not getting the +1 boost versus it, you taunt it so that way they can't curse and beat you. And then you just Drain Punch, and they're only doing about 20% each turn with with Wave Crash, and you're doing, unless they Terra Water, and you're doing about 20%, 22% with Drain Punch, and you're recovering more damage than what they're doing to you, especially when you couple that with leftovers. So that's just something that this Pokemon ends up running, and it allows it to beat multiple sets. You combine that with base 100 HP and 97 defenses, plus the bulk up boosting you, it becomes incredibly hard to deal with both offensively and defensively. But unless your name is Amoonguss. So let's see what they have to say here. Palafin was on the radar last week. It received only 1 vote. Finchinator to be banned. This is nowhere near enough support and even left at the jeopardy of falling off the radar altogether. However, there's been a recent surge in support for staying on the radar and potential future ban. Initially, people used the choice ban and all-out attacker variants of it. That sets were okay, making decent use of the bolstered attack, Palafin hero resid, and making it premier threat on rain teams, but did not highlight its best offensive qualities well enough. As of later last week, the bulk of variants of it, specifically when accompanied by taunt, became the status quo. This is what likely pushed Palafin from being just good to potentially being ban worthy. And again, this is why Amoonguss has such crazy high usage on Pokemon Showdown right now. Palafin Hero with bulk up is great at being able to circumvent, which would be counterplay. Changing types with terrestrializing allows you to dwarf Amoonguss with taunt for Spore, and it's suddenly an ability to strike super effectively and outpacing foes with priority stab boosted Jet Punch. And this is another reason why some people don't even run Terra type Water, but sometimes they run Terra type Steel. And the reason you run Terra type Steel is because with Taunt, Amoonguss can't Spore you, you resist Giga Drain, and more importantly, Amoonguss cannot Clear Smog you, so you can actually break through Amoonguss and it can't beat you. It does weaken your Jet Punch a little bit, because you get multiple bulk ups, it doesn't really matter right there. And many people do cite Palafin Hero's burden on its team, as it has to enter and exist once prior to changing forms as a major downside, which isn't like pretty much a downside, which is a very valid counterpoint. I don't think it's really a major downside, to be honest. You just send it out. It's harder on offense, right? On offense, it's hard because offense doesn't usually have a lot of switches, but if you're running a more balanced team, this mon fits just fine. It should has to rack up potential hazard damage multiple times because of this, which is stunt longevity that is normally only bolstered by non-stab Drain Punch. In an offensive metagame, this oftentimes does not matter, as Palafin Hero only needs to enter once or twice to leave its mark on a game, given how devastating and strong it is, and how limited the pool of counterplay is. We will see if any of these things hold it back enough to remain OU if there are now ample support to get rid of it, and despite lackluster support initially. What do you guys think about Palafin? I think with this set in particular, it's incredibly strong. I don't think it's even the best bulk up mon, though. We're gonna get into it in a sec. Why Annihilate is like the best one right now, but Choice Band is insane versus offense. Choice Band is obviously insane versus that plate style in particular, whereas it's a little bit worse versus Amoonguss type teams, because even if it predicts Amoonguss just regenerates it out and comes back in. And if it's Choice Band, Amoonguss teams basically all run Corviknight as well, because they pair incredibly well together. One of them getting rid of the hazards, being off the ground. They just pair super well together, especially because you can pivot back and forth between them versus Iron Bundle. But yeah, this set is what people thought that pushed Palafin to the edge, and this is why the council is putting him on it. The council is putting so many Pokemon, because this is where it gets a little bit interesting, right? So Annihilate is next on the list. Now, for those that don't know about Annihilate, it has a signature move. Okay, so technically it isn't a signature move because Rage Fist is learned by... It's a signature move of this line, right? Primeape gets it. It's crazy that Primeape is an NFE. But it gets a signature move, Rage Fist, which is a 50 base power move. And every single time you get hit, it gets boosted by 50 power. I get hit by U-turn, it's 50 power. Apparently, it's also boosted by things like Leech Seed, by things like Will-O-Wisp too. Don't quote me on that, but I just know being hit by attacks does that too. Also, Self-Confusion also hits that. So the set that kind of pushes this thing over the edge for people is Rage Fist, Drain Punch, right, for the reliable recovery, bulk up, and then rest. And then there's also the Taunt bulk up set too, but I like this one a little bit more. And what people do is, they run some speed for like the neutral base 60s, and they run this with a careful nature. And this Pokemon is like only taking like 60% from Shadow Ball from Godengo. It is also eating up basically all moves thrown at it, because it also Terra types into water. And the reason it Terra types into water is because water is such good defensive coverage, right? Versus it's neutral versus so much, and it also allows it to set up on Palafin, which can otherwise is not going for close combat versus you because you're fighting ghosts, and then you can easily tank the Jet Punch even from Choice Van variants, bulk it up. They really did buff Primeape in this mon. 110 HP, 80 and 90, 80 defense, 90 special defense, 90 speed. Crazy thing right here. But the fact that this Pokemon is on the list and it's not Rage Fist is really weird to me, because we had the same thing happen with Houndstone. And their reasoning for Houndstone being banned and not Last Respects, which is basically the exact same move, but that one's based on your Pokemon that faint on their team. So the more Pokemon that are fainted on your team, the stronger that move goes up and up and up. One Pokemon fainted, it goes up to 100 base power. Two Pokemon fainted, 150 base power, etc. It's weird because the reason they didn't want to ban Houndstone, or the reason they banned Houndstone is because another Pokemon later is supposed to get Last Respects, Basculegion, when it comes back from Pokemon Home, and they couldn't say if the move or the Mon was broken, and there's a whole discussion about that, how that went against what they said prior. But in this case, it's like this is the only Pokemon besides Primeape, which is not using the move, unless you're playing in-game 20 times to evolve it, that's using the move. So it's really, really interesting. Like, I really do think that Annihilape is such a sick Pokemon, and it's insane how easy it is to win with this set in particular. The reason why I Resto Chest is because you don't care about Toxic and status and things like that. But let's go to Primeape. They recently added it to the list along with Godengo, which is kind of wild to me, but Annihilape is another Ghost-type Pokemon, was initially limited by the presence of Flutter Mane, but then came out of the woodwork as strong offensive threat. First off, its Fighting Ghost typing granted a stat combination that is entirely unresisted, with specific exceptions of Terra-type Flying, Poison, Bug, Purifying, Salt, Garganacl. Its stats are nothing to sneeze at either, and has a good attack stat and is very respectable bulk. The cool thing about this mon is that it can beat Stall, like, single-handedly. Because it doesn't matter if you haze me, right? If you have hit me at any given points, my Rage Fist is boosting more and more and more, up to like, I think 350 base power. Yep. The most important move is in Arsenal is a signature move, Rage Fist, which is 50 base power, but the power increases by 50 each time now. It's hit, capping at an Ontrus with 350 base power. Importantly, this does not reset upon switching out. Exactly. Or fainting. So when Revival Blessing's there, or if you're reviving your in-game and things like that, it actually keeps stacking. Recently, to make the most of this move, we've seen a rise in bulk of Annihilate sets that focus on longevity. They usually run Drain Punch and either rest with Chesto Berry to grant a recovery and turn it into allow to take multiple hits to increase Rage Fist power, or Taunt with leftovers to force slower Pokemon to deal with Annihilate by directly attacking it and increasing Rage Fist power in doing so. However, Annihilate is limited by its unideal speed tier and a rather unimpressive defensive typing. I don't know about that. I feel like Fighting Ghost is really good. Resisting U-turn is so big, and taking neutral from most hits besides Shadow Ball is really, really big. This issue can be patched up by terastallizing, as many players opt for Terra Water to grant a better defensive typing. At the end of the day, Annihilate can be a very punishing Pokemon that in many cases require meticulous counterplay, as throwing off a bunch of weak attacks in its direction can prove to be regrettable later. We keep an eye on the Pokemon to ensure that it does not become overbearing. I just think that it's really interesting that Annihilate itself is on the has been added to the slate, and it's on the radar to be potentially banned, but they didn't like say specifically Rage Fist instead of the Mon. I'm not sure why they're saying the Mon. Because it's very clearly Rage Fist. It is literally any Mon with Rage Fist could doing crazy things like that as long as it has setup, right? So I feel like in this case, it's very, 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 very clearly Rage Fist. This move goes up to 350 base power. I don't even have to bulk up for it to be crazy. I don't like that it's Annihilate in itself. I think that this one in particular, especially because it's the only Pokemon that has it, right? It's not a case of Fishious Wren with Dracovish. Why? The reason they didn't ban Fishious Wren was because Arctovish got it too, and Arctovish was not broken with it, but Dracovish was broken with it. So they ended up banning Dracovish. Annihilate that doesn't have that situation, right? It's just a broken move, period. So if you were to do a ban, I would rather it not be the Pokemon. I would rather it be the move. And I still think this Mon would be used. I think Choice still has a slot, and obviously it'd be losing its best Ghost stab, right? You have to run stupid Shadow Claw. I hate that move so much. Like it's and Shadow Punch as well, but you could run it with like the punching gloves and boost it 1.1 times, and then Defiant would still be good. But yeah, I don't know. I don't like that personally. I do think it should be this. Godengo's on the list. This Mon, it's odd to see it on the list. It's a very good Pokemon, right? Godengo's very good. It's literally a staple on balance and offense because it blocks Defog. Good as Gold is an insane ability. It is immune to status moves. So it's immune to Spore, Will-O-Wisp, Toxic. I mean, it's a Steel type, so immune to Toxic anyway, but Toxic, just to give you guys ideas, right? But status moves also include Leech Seed, also include Defog. So it's insane the amount of moves this thing blocks. It is the ultimate spin blocker because you cannot Rapid Spin on it. You cannot Mortal Spin on it either because it's Ghost Steel. It's Steel type, you can't Mortal Spin. Because it's Ghost type, you can't Rapid Spin. And you cannot defog. You bring this thing in on Corviknight. Corviknight has to either Brave Bird or U-turn, or defog fails. And then you'll have its beautiful move, Make It Rain. 120 base power and everything, lowers special attack, scatters coins. I've never found any money on Pokemon Showdown except for maybe on making YouTube videos, so I guess, yeah, it does make it rain. And then you have Shadow Ball right there, Trick, and this is probably the most common move with Focus Blast. And then you have Terra type fighting, and Terra type fighting helps you resist the sucker punches that would otherwise knock you out from Pokemon like King Gambit, and knock it out with Focus Blast, obviously, and just breaking things. So this is like more common set. Choice picks is there. Nasty Plot recover on an air balloon, so it can rapid spin block Great Tusks. Now, the first few days of the metagame, Gholdengo was overshadowed by fellow Ghost type Fluttermane. I still think it was super good as a Scarf Ghost type, and a Spikes. Like, it's so amazing. I think that's kind of like, I don't think it was overshadowed. They had different roles. With the latter's ban, it became clear that Gholdengo has the right to compete with the top dogs. The first thing that may catch your eye when you check out Gholdengo is its fantastic Steel Coast typing alongside a high special attack stat. It sports a great move pull alongside it, which moves like Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, Nasty Plot Recover, Trick, and its signature move Make It Rain, a 120 base power steel move. Talk about this. This move pull allows it to serve as a threatening setup Pokemon or a choice Specs or Scarf user. Probably one of the best choice Scarf users in the game. Again, it can revenge kill a bunch of Pokemon, and Trick is really useful, especially because the way you beat Annihilate, by the way, is you literally don't attack it. You just literally don't attack it with like moves. You can phase it out with Dragon Tail or Whirlwind, whatever move you have, and you just either trick it or you just wear it down. Basically, if you're not boosting Rage Fist, it's not as much of a threat initially. And this thing is one of the mons that can trick it too. Just go. However, perhaps Gholdengo's greatest quality is its ability Good as Gold, which not only blocks status moves like Thunder Wave and Spore, but more importantly blocks Defog as well. This means that Corviknight, which is otherwise one of the most reliable means of hazard removal in the game, is able to remove hazards when facing Gholdengo. Its Steel Ghost typing makes it hard to makes it able to block both Rapid Spin and Mortal Spin as well, cementing its position as the most surefire hazard removal blocker we've ever seen. For this reason, you've often seen Air Balloon Gholdengo variants, I just said all of this, which are immune to the ground type attacks from common Rapid Spinners users like Great Tusk and Iron Treads, paired with a dedicated hazard setter like Glimmer or Garchomp, which are able to set up both Stealth Rock and Spikes. Gholdengo is limited by its awkward speed stat and the fact that that common Rapid Spinner user Great Tusk and Iron Treads commonly run knockoff, and as such are able to circumvent the Air Balloon variants. In some capacity, discussion has arisen within the community where the strategy of stacking hazards and maintaining them is healthy or not. I don't know. I think that it's not a broken Pokemon. It just makes a play style good, but it makes all play styles good. Like even Stall is good too because you can't get rid of the hazards. And as they mentioned, common Pokemon that can get rid of hazards have means of dealing with it. Shoot, even Glamora runs Earth Power, which is a solid 2 KO on Gholdengo, and outspeeds it as well, unless it's Choice Scarf. If it's on an Air Balloon, I've seen some run Power Gem 2 as a means to deal with that too, just to break the Air Balloon, then Earth Power them back. It's still weak to hazards. It has to terrestrialize defensively or offensively to deal with priority as well. And while it does have good stats all around, I mean, one of my favorite mons from this generation easily, and one of my favorite Choice Scarf users from this generation. I don't think it's like over centralized or even broken enough to really say, oh, this should be on this list. Not to mention Heavy Duty Boots is such a common item and used item. The other day I was using like Hippowdon, Corvi, Amoonguss type builds, and I ran Heavy Duty Boots on, well, 2 out of 3, not Corviknight, but on Hippowdon and Amoonguss, so like the hazards didn't even end up mattering in a sense. Like while Gholdengo came in on my Corviknight to block it, I just kept Brave Birding, chipping away at it and everything. It has great moves though. Make It Rain is a beautiful move. Like it's an insane move, and I think it's a great Pokemon. But even like though it naturally resists Breloom's attacks, Breloom's Banded Bullet Seed will still do so much to this Pokemon, so it can't always come in on Spores very freely. So there's this is like, I don't think Gholdengo should be on this list, in my opinion. I think like the only mon I kind of like agree is Palafin, and then I can sort of lean towards Iron Bundle, but from experience, the freaking Hydro Pump sucks. But yeah, I don't think Gholdengo should be on this list personally. I want to know your thoughts though. Please let me know. And then back on the list, we have Cyclizar. So Cyclizar was on the list before, mainly because of Shed Tail. It's literally, oops, sorry about that. It's literally Shed Tail. So it takes half your HP and you pass substitute in one move. And this is amazing because if I'm in versus, let's say, a Corviknight that wants to Brave Bird or pass to me, I can Shed Tail into like a Volcarona or an Iron Moth. Or like basically if I switch out, if you switch out, I get the advantage on whatever comes in, and I can get in my powerful sweepers, my powerful choice band Pokemon, my powerful choice specs Pokemon. I can get an Iron Bundle behind a sub, I can get in Palafin behind a sub and take advantage of that. Not to mention with Regenerator, I have multiple times to be able to do that, and plus this Pokemon also has access to Rapid Spin, Knock Off, Taunt, as well. And I've seen Scarf as well with Draco Meter, so you always get like the thing. My favorite set is literally heavy duty boots, and this is my favorite thing. Oops, ooh, I'm having trouble moving this, but just max HP, max speed. I think the fast subs are amazing for offense, and the fact that you can also run, instead of taunt, you can run U-turn too, as well, just to not be useless. Knockoff is nice because Goldengo will try and come in on you to block Rapid Spin, and you knock off their Choice Scarf, and then you can U-turn out after, or Shed Sail, allowing your team to do even more. Another one of the potential counterplays. Plus, being normal, Dragon is really nice. You can even Terrasilize into Steel types to be able to take the Fairy type attacks aimed at you, or just in general just have a bunch of resistances, because Steel has some beautiful resistances. So it's back on the list. It was on the radar before. It did not end up getting banned. Cyclozar is on the radar once more after receiving only 4 ban votes last time around when it needed 7 out of 9 councilmen to be banned. It remains an interesting case as it's pretty average Pokemon outside of a single controversial move. However, Shetzel is a new move that has been captured the attention of everyone, and this alone mandates its placement on the radar for the time being. Again, if it's Shetzel that's really capturing the member, I feel like Earthworm as well. And they talk about it right here. I feel like if it's the move, it's the move. It's not the mon. But the Shetzel allows for Cyclozar to essentially pass Substitute all within one turn to one of the many threatening Pokemon that will reside in the SVOU metagame. Pair this with Regenerator, and you make setting the table for the aforementioned scary offensive Pokemon be a little too crazy. Regenerator is already a strong enough ability on a fast Pokemon with pivoting potential like Cyclozar, but pairing it with a repeatedly Substitute plus Baton Pass move admittedly seems that it could be uncompetitive concept at its core. And remember, while it is kind of like Baton Pass because you're passing the sub, you cannot pass any stats. Stats are not passed. So for those that don't know. It's still early, and there is another Pokemon, Earthworm, who also runs Shetzel, so you want to see and hear more on both of these fronts. Right now, Cyclozar is the only one that qualifies for our radar, but we are monitoring the entire metagame. Anything is subject to change. Again, I think that it's the move. It's not the Pokemon. But Regenerator plus Shed makes this mon kind of, well, as a support mon, this mon is as good as it gets, right? You can get rid of hazards, you can taunt to stop your opponent from setting up or defogging or doing anything, you can knock off items, you can U-turn to gain momentum, you have Regenerator repeatedly come in and keep doing Shed You can Shed multiple, it might take 50%, but once you come back in, you're about 80-something%, and then you just keep Shed and getting in your offensive threats. But while the Cyclozar does have an insane combination of utility in its arsenal, it's also predictable in what it does. It cannot come in on most moves because its stats are not very good, right? This is like, I mean, you could run it max special defense, but then you don't have the fast Shed so you're not fast in the Pokemon like Roaring Moon and things like that. And then it's just one of those mons that, like, it would not be, like, it'd be a fine utility mon because you just run Taunt here, like if it didn't have Shed but obviously it wouldn't be as crazy as it is without Shed But the combination of Shed plus Regenerator is very, very strong in it. Still, not a mon that I think is too ban worthy, in my opinion. I think if they want to look at anything, it's the move on this one, and 2 Pokemon learn this move, and it's the move on both, right? Earthworm, the way Earthworm works is it can get up hazards, and then also Shed and has a slower passive Shed which is cool, but it doesn't have Regenerator. This one does have Regenerator. What are your thoughts on Cyclozar once again? And then Chien-Pao is back on the list too, after receiving no support for a ban in the initial slate after being indicated on the first radar. So basically, it was, a couple of days ago, it was on the first radar. We had a video on that. We talked about it. It got no votes to be banned. Chien-Pao has crawled back into the radar for another go-around. Many believe that its offensive presence was dwarfed by some of the biggest players, including the 2 Pokemon that got banned. I wonder if new openings can be found in the current landscape. We've seen what it's capable of already too, so it's very plausible. Chien-Pao has managed to ruin many defensive cores with the strength of many swords. This is largely in part of its ability, Sword of Ruin, which lowers the opponent's defense by 25%. Needless to say, this has a substantial impact on limiting defensive counterplay. Offensive counterplay is limited but existent as well due to Priority Sucker Punch and awesome speed-limiting Revenge Killer's prospects, while timely Terrasalization can make matters even more challenging for the opponent. However, Chien-Pao can be a liability without support in terms of pivoting and may not be able to get a chance to set up without perfect timing, or something that can limit opposing offense, such as being accompanied by screens. Given all of this, it is not easy to slap onto teams, as other Pokemon with more reliable and spammable priority or more redeeming defensive qualities with the right supporting cast, Chien-Pao can absolutely thrive, but seeing it limited in such an early stage may cause some hesitation in potential ban voters, despite the glowing review of its offensive profile provided above. Basically, this mon is super Weavile, right? It's super Weavile. It has insane speed. It has crazy priority. Well, I mean, in some cases it's bulkier than Weavile, but except on special events. And it can run access to heavy duty boots and really common. Sometimes you use Terra-type Dark. You'll see like Swords Dance. You'll see Crunch. You'll see the Sacred Sword or Ice Spinner or Ice Crash. And then you see Sucker Punch. Sometimes you'll see Ice Shard on it too. I know a lot of people also run Life Orb just for the added power and everything as well. But it's a very tough Pokemon to get in. It is really strong. Don't get me wrong. It's very strong, and it thrives versus bulkier teams because bulkier teams cannot hit it for as much damage unless they're running, like, you know, Body Press on Corviknight, and even then I could Terrasilize Dark and only be 2 times weak to Body Press, not 4 times, so it can't KO me. If I Terrasilize Dark and get +4 on Corviknight, I knock it out with Crunch, etc. But that and counterplay includes like Substitute Iron Bundle. Palafin can bulk up and resist its crunch, and can bulk up and resist its crunch. Not its crunch. If it goes Terra fighting, it can resist crunch, but it resists the icicle attack coming at it. And if it's not running crunch, and if it's running like ice, take its sword, Sucker Punch, which doesn't usually run this combination. Obviously, Palafin can set up on it as well. Goldengo can Terrasilize Fighting to resist the Sucker Punch and knock it out with Make It Rain. So there is counterplay. It's mainly involved with Terrasalizing, and I think Terrasalizing is what also makes Chien-Pao so good, which is why they're still also looking at Terrasalizing, looking for some options as well. And I'll talk a little bit about some options, and I want to know your thoughts too, specifically, obviously, with Pokemon Showdown itself. But I don't know, it's hard to, again, another mon that's kind of hard for me to say, oh, this mon is just straight up broken. I think the Swords Dance set isn't as great versus offensive teams. I think you're better off with like the Life Orb for attack set, which is super strong versus offensive teams. The Team Choice Band too, as well. Someone was using Choice Scarf, which I think is interesting. I don't think it's that great, but even like offense specifically has like Dragon Dance, normal Terra, Dragonite with E-Speed to out prioritize it. And also to not be weak to Ice Shard. So the people are adapting to this Pokemon. It wasn't banned before. It received absolutely 0 bolts the last time. I don't think it'd be banned again. What are your thoughts on this Pokemon in particular? I don't think it would be banned again. And then last they have is the Roaring Moon once again. This one actually got a nerf from the last time it was on this, because we now know that Photosynthesis boosts speed 1.5 times, but every other stat by Boost Energy or Sunny Day boost is 1.3. So its attack actually got lower on Pokemon Showdown. It stayed the same on Wi-Fi battles and in-game, but its attack actually got lower on Pokemon Showdown because we learned new things. I mean, Showdown doesn't usually have a metagame perfect for a while, right? Because we keep learning, consistently learning new things. So the speed boosting Dragon Dance sets have only 1.3, basically a damage of Life Orb, but the most common and strongest set is actually not even using its stab, but it's using acrobatics with a booster energy, and it's using flying Terra type, and you have booster energy right here, and you get the attack raise, and you Dragon Dance, and you crunch, and then you run Earthquake, and that's kind of like, this is kind of like the most standard and strongest set that it ends up running. Obviously, you can also run Jolly if you want to as well. You take out a little bit of attack and you put that in your spit F for HP, and then you get the speed boost from booster energy, and it just Dragon Dances, crunches, and does that. Biggest drawback to this Pokemon, very, very, very low defense, right? 105 HP might seem like a lot, but this Pokemon very rarely runs Assault Vest. Assault Vest, heavy duty boots, excuse me, or anything to really like circumvent hazards. So like Spikes and Stealth Rock are really going to be wearing it down, and a lot of the times it's knocked out by like Palafin's Jet Punch boosted attack if it's banded easily, especially if it's Terrasilizes again. Even if it Terrasilizes into a flying, it's weak to ice, so Ice Shard from Chien-Pao. And yeah, this is basically the standard set that this Pokemon runs and what it does. And they have to say, much like Chien-Pao, Roaring Moon was unable to get any votes in support of a ban during the initial voting. In addition, it found out potentially limiting news today in forms of the Photosynthesis news. This makes the outlook for Roaring Moon pretty good when it comes to chances of winning OU, but is not entirely straightforward and a lot quite yet. Roaring Moon has continued to take advantage of Terrasilize utilizing Terra Flying with acrobatics to neutralize fairy types, and it hit relatively hard along the way. This has helped establish Roaring Moon as one of the best win conditions in the game with Dragon Dance, and one of the more consistent offensive views of Terrasalization in the metagame as well. It's also strong and fast, both of which are bolstered by Dragon Dance. However, adding a third complementary slab like attack goes a long way, pushing it a Roaring Moon to stay on the radar. Despite this, there's still limitations to what Roaring Moon could do, as there's a massive barrier to entry and free turns right now in such a hectic metagame. Basically, what I mentioned, it fails to set up for free, Hazard still gets it, Corvi and stuff can still take it, like it still gets stabbed on crunch and stuff, don't get me wrong, but Corvi and things can break it too, and Call this revenge killing on the offensive end and checking on the defensive end at least being possible, especially when speaking relative to the other members of the radar. You find Roaring Moon in a more awkward place than some mentioned above, perhaps. It's still a very dynamic offensive presence with great capabilities, but you can also minimize it in many cases, and perhaps even dwarf it. You're prepared for a timely terrestrialization. And again, in terms of terrestrialization, this is a mon that basically needs to terrestrialize in order to do damage. Crunch and Earthquake are good, but pretty easy to wall in a sense. And then if you're staying your dark, your Dragon Dark, Mach Punches there too. There's a lot of things that can happen with this Pokemon in a sense. And again, I think it mainly needs to terrestrialize in order to use this Acro set. Now, Acro is amazing, right? Booster energy being absorbed, so Acro's 110 base power and it becoming stab is incredible. But I don't think Roaring Moon is something, especially if terrestrialization ends up getting banned, which is something they want to look at. I don't think this is something that like will stay banned. I also don't think it's that great of a mon personally, right? And I had a whole long video with my buddy CTC and Blunder. We kind of agreed on the same thing, that this mon is just like not anything too crazy. And without terrestrialization, it's not crazy at all. I do want to know your thoughts on that too. It's interesting because they also had Iron Valley on the radar. It seems like more of a fringe option to be included this time around, even though Specs is rising up in usage. Gargonackle was on the radar as well. Neither is remotely close to being banned. Neither is on the radar right now, but both are very much in the middle of the council decisions as pesky presence in the metagame. And this is before they actually added Goldengo, which they had hinted towards here. Gargonackle is really, really funny to think about. And then in terms of terrestrialization itself, they're going to be opening up policy review thread and overuse self-form thread on the topic of terrestrialization later this week. Basically, they're going to be taking opinions from people. In terms of terrestrialization, there's a few ways they can do it, right? They either ban it outright as a whole, right? So you ban terrestrialization as a whole. So we'll have another generation, kind of like last generation, where there won't be the gimmick of it, right? Dynamax is, I think, clearly was more busted in singles than anything we've ever seen. And I guess there's full discussions on that too if you need. Like, I mean, you get supercharged Pokemon, they get supercharged moves, you get double your HP, etc., etc. Terrestrialization doesn't do that. There's either ban terrestrialization as a whole. That's one option. The other option is that you basically are forced to, and I kind of like this option, right? But it is different than the game, so I don't know if Showdown would be hesitant to do it. But your Pokemon shows its Terra type when it enters in battle. Basically, if I send out Roaring Moon, it says Dragon Dark. Under it, you'd see something that says Terra Flying. So it gets rid of the, wow, why can't I think of the word? I'm sorry, it's like 2:52 a.m. when I'm recording this. I'm about to go stream in an hour. And I just recently woke up from Thanksgiving. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. You celebrated. If you didn't, hope you had a good Thursday. But basically getting rid of that guesswork, right? The quote-unquote unpredictability of terrestrialization, because I know what you can terrestrialize to. Though in Roaring Moon, it's a bad example because for the most part, it's going to be flying. But then if you send out your Toxapex and I see that you can be Steel, I see that that is an option. So it just adds like something to keep in the back of my eye. It gets rid of that guesswork. I can know you are your Gargonackle. You could either be, a lot of Gargonackle likes to run, between Fairy, Fighting, water, or flying. So this would show me what it is prior. I think that would be a pretty cool way to keep terrestrialization and not have it be as crazy as it is. But again, that's something that is not like the game, so maybe Showdown won't be willing to do something like that. But I do know they also, some of the admins want to keep the main gimmick of the game. And to be honest, I want terrestrialization to stay as well. I'm kind of enjoying it, and I'm also starting to feel like we are beginning to adapt. It's like, okay, Hugo, they're going to terrestrialize here their Pokemon. What can I do about that? And obviously there are some exceptions to Pokemon like the terrestrialize, and they're still pretty nasty, right? Like, this thing is going to terrestrialize water for the most part if it's banded or even set up. Though Steel is an option for Mungus, but water. So it's like, okay, even though I know it's water, it's still a very, very crazy Pokemon to deal with. So there's obviously pros and cons to that. But what solution would you say? I know a lot of people are not in favor of bans. I'm the way I see a metagame, and I want a metagame to be fun. I think fun should be prioritized over everything. And I do think the metagame should be quote-unquote balanced in a sense. I do think the better players should be winning versus the weaker players. As in, like, that's how most games should be, right? Skilled players will win more times than players who are not as experienced, right? And that's fine, because the players who are not as experienced, they play more, they end up getting the experience, and they start winning more and more, right? And then with terrestrialization, you could argue that that's not always the case because of that unpredictability. it's lack of consistency. There are a lot of consistent players regardless, and I feel like as the metagame goes on, I think that's just super important. I value that more over an extremely stable and otherwise boring metagame, in my opinion. Like what Sword and Shield OU, what a lot of people saw Sword and Shield OU was for the longest time. So I value that very high, right? I think that a metagame should be very fun. And so what would make the metagame more fun for you, but also not as chaotic in the sense that this is very fun, but it's still competitive, right? Because you want it to be competitive. You want if you're working hard, if you're practicing hard, you want to win most of your games because you're putting in the work, right? You don't want to just lose games because your Pokemon became bug type and it resists Breloom. But you can also argue that terrestrialization is something that really, really, really benefits strong team builders. And it benefits the work you put in the team building, right? If I terrestrialize my Corviknight to bug type because my team is weak to banded Breloom and you've set it up to win with banded close combat, but I terrestrialized to bug and I won late game because I was at like 45%. Banded close combat knocked me out, but because I terrestrialized the bug type, I saved my terrestrialization, right? We're 1v1ing last Pokemon Breloom versus last Pokemon Corviknight. I not only saved my terrestrial type for the best moment, but I also picked in the team builder specifically to be able to deal with this Pokemon. And you don't kill me with close combat, I kill you with Brave Bird, but data recoil, but I win the game because I got the last kill, you died first. I think that that rewarded me because of terrestrialization, and it rewarded me in the builder. And I don't think that's necessarily a skill. I don't think that's necessarily like a skill diff, right? No, that's just more so, or like, I don't think that's like, oh man, the unpredictability of this. I mean, sure, but also it was good prep on my part. You know what I mean? So like and that would obviously, if you could see that I was Terra type bug, you would keep that in your head while playing. I think that would also open up many layers of the game, and I think make it even more fun too. So I want to know your thoughts on that. I want to know your thoughts on these Pokemon. In terms of if I have to go overall again, Palafin, I understand if this Pokemon has to go. Annihilate, ban Rage Fist if you're going to ban Annihilate. Goldengo, no. Cyclizar, no. If you have to do anything, do Shed Tail. And I still think Shed Tail opens up good combinations. Roaring Moon sucks without terrestrialization. Iron Bone, Hydro Pump freaking sucks, and I hate using this mon because I freaking hate Hydro Pump. But everybody has 175% .4321 accuracy versus me. And then Chien-Pao, I don't see it as broken. But that's my overall super quick, too long, don't read. And find a solution for terrestrialization that lets us keep it. That's my too long, don't read of the entire video, my little summary of the entire video. But let me know your thoughts down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you guys later today with a new video. Peace.